Remember, if you're in witness protection, you might not want to share yourself. Okay, so everyone should be seeing just the presentation. If you're seeing the cheat sheet where you can see 2 slides, that's not correct. Can you all just see 1 slide in the Zoom? Are you all seeing 1 slide? Okay, so thank you, Tom. That helps so much. All right, let's give it a go. Daddy's only going over here. Okay, everyone, so welcome to the first in a very long time Hampton Roads Bird Club meeting. It's nice to see some of us are segregated, and I should be wearing my mask, but I don't know where that is right now. So, sorry. I'll try to get that in a moment, but let's talk about April 22nd. We have a special guest this evening, so we're going to go through the things that we typically go through or not. I'll just, whoop. What's up, buddy? You can give me a big hug. Come here. Oh, yeah, those are mine. Okay, so we'll talk about what we've been seeing. Some little quick sightings that we've been seeing. We'll also talk about as we do a little quiz. We'll have nice in the news things coming up about a field trip. And then in the field, an open discussion, and then our wonderful evening presentation. I think everyone here has been a member, but if there's anyone new, besides our wonderful speaker who we've got to see once or so, would you like to introduce yourselves? Yes. Okay, great, thank you. Welcome, John. Yes. Okay, well, then you're right spot, like in birds and wildlife. So let's see what we've all been seeing with that. I will start off. So at a new place, I got a new yard bird recently. I had a clapper whale walk through our backyard, which does kind of butt up to a salt marsh, but it was nice to see it actually in the yard the other morning doing its thing. So that was cool for me. Who else has been seeing things? Dave. And so Dave just saw 1 hour ago a ruby-throated hummingbird. Yes. Okay. All right. So prairie warbler we have. If you are in Zoom, use the chat so I can see, because the microphone doesn't let me have audio. So you can use the chat to share what you've seen. So far, no one's seen anything. Yes, John. Cool. Yeah, so the osprey have been really enforced fishing on campus because I teach at Hampton University. They've been dropping a lot of fish on people's cars. I don't know if it's a young osprey that's not handling it well, but there's been people complaining about it. Anyone else see anything? Yes. Oh, swallows. So Alice was saying for everyone that he saw a big group of tree swallows, and Angie has a ruby-throated hummingbird in for the last 4 days. So they're about. What did you see, Henry? Yeah, so we put up a bluebird house. So we have some bluebirds checking that out. I don't know if they'll like it or not, but they've been checking it out. Dave. Oh, so Dave had blue grosbeak, a ovenbird, hooded warbler, and a yellow-throated warbler. So not in his yard, but apparently out and about. So let's see what birds we are. It worked once, but of course it's not going to work twice. John, we might switch to yours. Cedar Waxwing by Don. Stop, Henry. So what's this bird? So yes, it is a young whale. So it's an immature, a young whale. I know it's a young clapper whale. Yeah. Yeah, it's a bird called a whale. Now be quiet. And then the next is another young bird. What's this bird? What's this one? It's a young bird. There's a theme for the birds that I'm showing. So we had a young clapper whale. It is a red-winged blackbird. So excelente. And then the last one, what is that, Henry? No, no, no. It is an egret. Yeah, so it's a little snowy egret. Snowy egrets, yeah. Henry, can you not get in front of the thing? Okay, so good, that was snowy egret. All right, so let's go through committees. I don't know if Gwen is out there, but we took care of the people who were new. So we had 2 visitors. Hospitality, Jane's back on duty, bringing snacks and others. That's a dolphin, yeah. So hospitality is going, although we will mention and put this out for everyone outside and also the wonderful people here. June will be our picnic, we hope. And so we'll have to start collecting snacky snacks and stuff for that. Are you going to send something out about that, Jane? Yeah, so we'll have an email. I'll send an email out about our June picnic, interest, and then if we need to have a plan about where to have it, and we'll plan that out. Mark's in the back. Okay. Okay. So apparently this magically works. Tom, I know you can't talk, but I'll say what Tom always says, please contribute to the newsletter. There's been some wonderful articles that are out in the newsletter. I'm sure he will mention and perhaps in the chat put down who has recently contributed. I think Mike can talk about some things because he gives images to the newsletter for our photography contest. So you want to say something about that for the people here and then I can repeat. Okay. Okay, great. So a lot of images, wonderful images, contest continuing on. Summertime, we kind of hold off, but take your pictures and then bring them for the new, it's not academic year, I'm a professor, what do we call it? Meeting year when we start back in September. Publicity, since I said, do you want to say anything besides what you already said, Michael? Okay. Yeah, we are on the next slide. So, okay. And then the webpage is going strong besides anything problematic or radical changes or minor changes or? Okay, so it should be fine. So the Maxis are leaving, so. Newsletter inputs are by April 25th. Please, field trip notice, reports, photo contest winners, presenters, abstracts. Tom's asking for all of those things to please be in by the 25th. So let's talk about elections. I sent an email out. Some people responded. I didn't check it after 3 o'clock today. So there's a few people I know who are still willing to serve, myself and Bill. There's some other things that we may wish to. So there's some people here. And if you're in the audience at home on Zoom, you can let me know via the chat. But since the Maxis are here, are you still willing to serve in the capacity of, or do you hope someone else wants that position? Okay. Okay. So I know Mike has mentioned that he wouldn't mind actually becoming one of our board member representatives if someone wants to help do the publicity, which is mostly helping to run the Facebook photo contest, interacting with Tom a little bit, as well as really that's mostly your responsibilities to do. Post the field trips that comes from James. The field trip coordinators, I don't know why they're missing, but James said he'll still do those things. But we do need a vice president. So anyone out there or here today, Henry, you can't be the vice president, but a vice president would be much appreciated. And I think everyone else is still staying in their positions, but anyone home or here who wishes to have a position is welcome to run, even for president. I won't mind, but those are something that we need to do for next month, which brings us to the more important. I need an election committee set of people or one person. So everyone who's on here and most of the people who are here can't run the elections because of our bylaws and of course, conflict of interest. So is someone willing to, before I volunteered one of our members to collect the votes at next month's meeting, which will be also virtual, so we won't have to necessarily be here. Someone out there can do it. So if you're interested, email me or I'm going to start reaching out. Does that seem fair? Okay, if not, that's still the way I'm going to do it. So in the field, I think if James was there, he can correct any mistakes. So Tom or Michael, because they're keeping track. It's Saturday, April 23rd, Hogs Island. The WMA has a permit. James wrote for a special permit that allows 24. For those of you who have a WMA access permit will work, a fishing license and a hunting license, but you do need to have access to get into there. One of the big things that James underscored was this idea of making sure you have your ID. So identification, because you have to move across a power plant and they check you to make sure it's all good. And everyone was meeting at the entrance at 7 a.m. There's a small parking area. If you can carpool so you don't have a huge convoy driving through the WMA, it will be much appreciated. All right, so yeah, you're not getting in. Plus he's armed apparently. Dave was going to mention something about a Club Spring Big Day. I know you. Good time to get mom outside. Say good time to get mom outside.
That's what I like to do. Just we'll run it the same way we always do. Is you go out, you bird anywhere in the state of Virginia. You got as many birds as you can, send it to us to me, and then I'll compile the list, and we'll see how many we can get as a club.
All right, so just to repeat for everyone at home, Dave was mentioning on May 7th, we'll have our club day anywhere in Virginia. See how many birds. You don't have to count individuals, just the number of species. and we'll see how many we get this year, which was pretty fun, and it's been a good club activity since COVID has started. I know Bill might want to say something. If you could use the chat, Bill, and I'll repeat it for our wonderful audience here about the spring bird count. I think all the information is correct, which should be coming up this weekend. Does that seem right, Bill? Okay, so Mike's confirming that for me. So hopefully we'll see you out and about. VSO's also happening Friday the 29th and May the 1st down at Great Dismal Swamp. So that's where the annual meeting will be. So hopefully a lot of us won't feel that it's too far of a trek and go check things out and meet up with fellow birders. And then so we can move on because we're delayed because of my tech problems. But is there any new business before we welcome our wonderful guest speaker this evening? All right, hearing no new business, I'm going to turn this over to Mike to introduce our speaker, and then we'll have that. You want to hold this at least so the people who Zoom can.
All right, Zoom people and everybody here in the audience, it's my great pleasure to put on my glasses and introduce Katie Foster, who's sitting right in front of me. You probably know because I believe John's words and Tom's newsletter introduced Katie and shared that she was going to be presenting today, kind of giving us a background on her research project. Katie is the recipient of our education fund, and she's very grateful for that. And she will be participating in commencement on the 14th of May. She'll be graduating with her bachelor's degree in biology with a major in organismal biology. That's me. She applied early to get into what we call the 5-year program for a master's degree in environmental science. And so she's really been working on her project for over a year now, or at least a year, which is really great. And the idea of the 5-year program is you start early, you get in as a junior, and then you can start your research project and you can potentially finish in 5 years. You may have seen Katie at Wild Birds Unlimited because she works there part-time, and she's one of the friendly folks there that help us carry our food and et cetera out to our vehicles. You probably also know, you may have heard that she is a TA for our ornithology lab, who's instructed by Dr. Sherwin. And I just wanted to share one little thing here. Katie and I have known each other for a couple years now, and I serve on her master's thesis committee. I'm very grateful for that. But way back in February of 2020, that's just prior to COVID hitting in, right? And so I got an email with the subject line saying, "Cool bird." So I thought I better take a look at this. And then there's what Katie wrote. She said, I thought you would find this interesting. My mom noticed an unusual bird in our yard last week, and she couldn't identify it. So she contacted one of our birder friends, and he came out to record it. Turns out that it is a female Scots oriole, which is normally only found in the Southwest US, Mexico, and South America. Our bird is the first recorded Scots oriole in Virginia, and people are coming to my house from all over the state to look at it. Unfortunately, I wasn't one of them who went out there, but I regret that choice. But I'm so delighted to welcome Katie to Hampton Road Bird Club's April 2022 meeting. And let's give Katie a warm welcome. And then here we go. I don't know if you want to do the same or you want to put up.
Is the mic good?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, good. Okay, I'll see if it works. No. Okay. So hi, everybody. Like Dr. Meyer said, I'm Katie. Thank you for the lovely introduction. And I wanted to say thank you to all of you for your support of my research. And I'm really excited to be able to finally share it with you guys tonight. Okay, so what I'm trying to figure out is how agricultural management practices are impacting grassland bird populations in Swope, Virginia. And I'm specifically looking at the impacts of haymaking and cattle grazing on the bird populations. So first, I wanted to give a little background on grasslands and the underlying issue here. So our grasslands in the United States are rapidly disappearing. A recent study found that over 60% of America's grasslands have been converted to agricultural use. So this means either use as cattle pastures, hay fields, or fields to grow crops in. And here in the Southeast US, over 90% of our native grasslands have been converted. And this habitat loss is obviously devastating for the species that rely on these habitats, especially grassland birds. So specifically about Virginia's grasslands, when we think of grasslands, we automatically think of the Great Plains, the Midwest, but we actually have a good amount of grasslands here in Virginia. And this map kind of just shows where they are. They're concentrated in the Shenandoah Valley and Piedmont regions, but over 85% of all the grasslands in our state are privately owned farms. So that's why it's so important for researchers and farmers to work together to figure out the best ways to conserve grassland bird populations. So what classifies as a grassland bird? So grassland birds rely on grassland habitats for nesting. And there's about 40 species of obligate grassland birds in the US. And so the obligate just means that they are completely reliant on the grasslands and they need them to survive. Hundreds of other species of birds can be found in grasslands. They just aren't as reliant as these species are. And because grasslands are declining, so are the grassland bird populations. And a recent study in 2019 found that grassland bird populations have declined by 53% since the 70s, which is a huge number. And that's equivalent to over 720 million adult breeding birds. And another study found that grassland birds are the organisms most affected by the alteration of grassland habitat in the US. And so these are 5 species of grassland birds frequently found in the US. Down here, we've got the horned lark. This is the dickcissel, the greater prairie chicken, the bobwhite, and the upland sandpiper. And so other than the habitat loss threat, there's some direct threats to grassland bird populations that come from agriculture. Haymaking and mowing disturbances and the intense cattle grazing are the ones that I'll be looking at, but other studies look at the impacts of prescribed fires and pesticide use on the grassland birds. But some of these threats can actually be beneficial if they're done in a moderate way. So one study found that light grazing can be beneficial because it causes vegetation regeneration. And so, for example, when the bison were grazing plentifully in the Midwest, they had free rein, they weren't confined by fences and borders, so they weren't overgrazing. But with continuous cattle grazing, it's a method where the cattle are in really high stock density, and so they're overgrazing in one specific field, and they're not taken out of that field until they've eaten all the vegetation. So that's really damaging to the ecosystem. Okay. So onto my own study. I'm doing my research in Swope, Virginia, and it's a really small community in Augusta County in the Shenandoah Valley. It's right up here. It's about 45 minutes south of Harrisonburg, an hour west of Charlottesville. And it's really rural. It's got no stoplights, it's got one gas station, it's got a post office, and that's about it. The rest is fields. So it's the perfect spot to do grassland bird research, and it's where I grew up, so it's perfect. And so I'm doing this research on 3 different farms that use 3 different agricultural management methods. The first farm is Wheatland's farm, and they use a rotational grazing method, which means that they rotate the cattle between numerous pastures every 3 to 4 days. And this is a picture I took at Wheatland's. It's very pretty. And they cut hay in mid-July, so after most of the birds' breeding period is over. And so they classify themselves as a late hayed farm. The second farm is Hewitt Farm. They do the complete opposite of Wheatland's farm. So they implement the continuous grazing method that I was talking about a minute ago. So they have lots of cattle in one field with no rotation until they've eaten all of the vegetation. And they cut hay in late May and then again in late June. So they're classified as an early delayed hay. And so this is a map of Wheatland's and Hewitt Farm. Interestingly, they share a border right here. So I'm really excited to see the comparisons between those fields right there. And I'm not sure if you guys can see it, but you can even tell here how much denser the vegetation is than right here in the continuous fields. But yeah. And the third farm is Polyface Farm. They use a holistic grazing method. And this farm is pretty well known. It's run by Joel Salatin. It's been in a few Netflix documentaries about sustainability. And the holistic grazing method just means that they incorporate the needs of the ecosystem and the wildlife into their management strategies and try to time things around breeding cycles and everything to minimize damage done to the ecosystem. And they cut their hay anytime between June 1st and July 1st, depending on the weather that year. They switch it up. Okay, so now on to the birds, everyone's favorite part. So we've got the red-winged blackbird, which I'm sure everyone already knows. Very abundant around here, but we've got the male and the female. And even though they're one of the most abundant birds in the country, they've still had pretty significant population declines since the 1970s. They've had a population decline of 28%, which I consider pretty high. And then the eastern meadowlark, which I don't know if you guys are familiar with. Do they come around here much? Yeah? Okay. But they're one of my favorite grassland birds, but they've had a really large population decline of 89% since the 1970s. Now on to the sparrows. We've got the savanna sparrow on the left and the grasshopper sparrow on the right. They look pretty much identical except for this tiny little strip of yellow right above his eye, but they look very similar. They're very hard to tell apart in the field until they start singing. But both species have had pretty remarkable population declines. We've got almost 50% and 72% population declines. And my favorite one, the bobolink. We've got the breeding male over here and the female. They're beautiful. I was gonna play a call, but I don't know if we can. Do these guys come around here much? Migration. So, migration, okay. No, you're good. But they have a really unique call. It sounds very metallic-y and bubbly at the same time. But yeah, I just think they're really cool. They sound like little robots or something. And some more facts about bobolinks because I love them. They are long distance migrants, so they winter down, they winter down here in South America and then travel up here to breed. And what's really cool is this little strip of breeding area is the Shenandoah Valley, so right where Swope is. So I'm very lucky to be able to get to see their breeding season happen. They are in the blackbird family, and they're the only member of their genus. The males molt twice a year, so during breeding season, they look very handsome in their black and white, and then in the winter time, they look similar to the females. And they have had population declines of 65% since the 1970s, and although they are not listed as protected in the United States, they are listed as threatened in Canada. So what will I be doing? So my assistant and I will be visiting each farm 2 or 3 times a week. And then we'll go out about 7, 8 in the morning, spend a couple hours in each field at each farm. And the total number of fields will be determined soon. I'm going home tomorrow to talk to all the farmers about it. So I'm very excited. And at each visit in each field, I will do visual bird surveys to determine the abundance and diversity of the birds in each field. I'll observe and record their behavior to try to figure out what stage they are at in their breeding cycle. Once nests are laid, I will observe nest abundance in each field and monitor them until they successfully fledge or fail. And if they do fail, I'll record the reason for their nest failure. So whether it be predation or trampling by cattle, or if it got run over by the haymaker, or if I accidentally stepped on it, which has happened before, unfortunately. And I'll also record the vegetation height and density at each nest site. So I'm not going to get super into the stats and data analysis and everything, but these are the Excel sheets I'm going to use to enter all the data. But basically, I'm just going to try to figure out if there are statistical differences in bird abundance, bird diversity, nest success, and nest abundance between the 3 different farms, since they use the 3 different agricultural methods. So I did do field research last summer, and I found out that it is extremely difficult to find their nests since they all nest on the ground under the grass. So you could be standing right on top of it and have no idea. But I did find 23 red-winged blackbird nests and 1 grasshopper sparrow nest. And you can see them all on this map. They were all in the late hayed fields at Wheatlands. And then my lone little grasshopper sparrow nest is down here, right on the border of Wheatlands and Hewitt Farm, actually in the continuously grazed pasture at Hewitt Farm. But I found out that in Swope, red-winged blackbirds start nesting about the 2nd week in May, and the fledglings didn't leave until late July or early August. So here are some pictures of all of my baby birds. So over here, we've just got some red-winged blackbird eggs. In the middle picture, they're about 4 days old there, very hungry. They thought I was the mom. And then over here, they're closer to getting ready to fledge. So they were about 8 or 9 days old. And this is my lone grasshopper sparrow nest. I was very excited when I found him, but eventually we found out that it wasn't viable. It stayed like that for about 25 days, and then it eventually got trampled by cattle. So not successful, but this picture shows how hard it is to find their nests. You can't see it at all, but I promise it's in there somewhere. And so, although I didn't find the nests for all the species, I still learned a lot of really important things just from observing their behavior. For example, I observed that the red-winged blackbirds only nested in the fields with the tallest vegetation. So they like the late hayed fields or the rotationally grazed pastures. Both sparrow species were only found in the fields with the shortest vegetation. So the middle hayed fields, the early hayed fields, and the continuously grazed pastures. And the bobolinks and the meadowlarks were found in any field, any vegetation length, which made me believe that implementing a combination of different management strategies may be the best method for conserving the species, like the grassland birds as a whole. And so at the end of my study, I hope to determine the grassland bird nesting windows for the Mid-Atlantic region. There is similar research that's been done in the Northeast and in the Midwest, but not in the Mid-Atlantic, and their nesting windows would differ from those regions since the climate's different and the migration arrival dates would be different. I also hope to determine the impacts of the different management styles on the breeding bird populations, and overall, I hope to suggest a farming schedule that minimizes interference with the birds, but simultaneously benefits the farms. Thank you all. Any questions? Yeah. I haven't been to Polyface and Hewitt Farm, so I don't know yet. I'm gonna check on that when I go tomorrow, actually, but I'm not sure. That's a good thing that I should check on. Yeah.
So for the cattle,
Mhm.
have you thought about, and are you going to look at compression because of the cattle within the field and hence changes to the type? So
I had not. We had thought about studying how if they nested more in like where the cattle had, what's the scientific word for that? Okay, where the cattle had defecated to see if because the vegetation grew higher there. So we were gonna see if there was a like higher nesting success or abundance in that taller vegetation because it was growing out of the fertilized ground, but I hadn't thought about compression, no.
I don't know if because of that
Mm-hmm.
compression might be a problem. Because the cows in the field where they're actually as well?
No, it's two separate things.
In the West, especially in air regions, the cows compress soil.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it completely shifts all the grassland.
Okay.
If you do a literature search like Texas cow ranching grassland birds, there's a lot of work that's being done and soil compression cows and other things, because I said that are impacted by.
Okay. Very interesting. Yeah.
What's the makeup with plants between native versus non-native species?
I do not know. I need to do more research on the vegetation, but I didn't do anything with the vegetation last year. It's my first year doing it with the densities and everything, but I will figure that out. Mm-hmm.
To get someone to show you how to do plant dressing, so we make basically a flip.
Mm-hmm.
Have some video reference collection.
Okay. Okay. No, that's a great suggestion. Right. Yeah.
So have you seen brown-headed cowbirds? How do you think they might play a part in this?
I have not seen them personally, but I hear all the farmers talking about them, but I know they parasitize nests. And so I went and studied with some people who are doing a similar research at the Smithsonian Conservation Biology Institute, and they were actually doing stuff with brown-headed cowbirds and the parasitism. And they had a whole different like study data spreadsheet, seeing if what percentage of the nests were parasitized by them.
So I mentioned that because if you're looking at the agricultural practices, you might have a confounding effect on nest success if it's because of the cowbirds.
Right. Okay.
So you might consider how to monitor them or add that to your parameters to track them.
Okay. Yeah.
Go ahead. You've done are you going to approach the farmers to say what's in their best interest if you come up with a management plan?
So at least the 3 farmers that I'm working with right now are extremely open and supportive of doing whatever is best for the birds right now. Even the continuous grazing farm, they are very adaptable and willing to change their behavior. I'm not sure about all the other farms in the area, but at least the 3 that I found are. Yeah.
Well, that's probably because of the third farm has a good settlement. So he could publicize so much, I read about all much.
Yeah.
And he's showing where he's beginning to make money by these sustainable techniques. So I think he's had an effect on the behavior.
Definitely.
Sean kind of stole somewhat of my question, but I didn't know if you noticed any like predatory disturbances like snakes and
yeah, there's a lot. The 6 nests that failed, that I knew failed last summer, were all from predation. We know we have a lot of raccoons, snakes, possums, anything like that. I actually saw a mink running through the fields last year, which I'd never seen before, but there's a lot of predators out there.
Where are you going to school?
Christopher Newport.
You got a bachelor's degree?
I am working on it. I'll graduate with a bachelor's degree in May of this year and a master's degree in May of next year.
So I was curious. You look at the latest information with grassland birds other places.
Not in compared to other places, but compared to failures from agricultural practices, and the predation rates were higher than the failures from the agriculture.
So for your last year's data, how does that compare with the, say, standard?
It was pretty consistent. The only thing that kind of differed was that a lot of the literature said that the sparrow species preferred nesting in taller vegetation, but I didn't see a single sparrow in the tall vegetation. They were only in the really short, continuously grazed pastures over on the Hewitt side. So I thought that was really interesting.
And that might be So another question I had is, thought about remote sensing?
No.
Like setting out microphones that will record, so you don't have to hear all the time. Listen back to the recording. You'll see there's some machine learning that will tell you, well, that's probably over there. So you're not sitting out or having your undergrad helpers sit out constantly.
No, that would be really cool. I don't know. Does CNU have anything like that?
Because you might even be able to think about how to ask that will take too long, but do things like GoPro and stuff too, that you can set out and monitor the police displaying birds, whether you want to won't have a resolution, you can pick out a larger camera, various behaviors that you might not be able to see because of observer bias or just the fact that you can't do that all.
Right.
According to whatever hours you record, listen.
Okay.
If you want to program against hours, listen.
Okay, great.
Any other questions for Katie? I know I did not like things, but I get the nerd hat. All right, thank you.
Thank you guys.
So hopefully everyone at home, does anyone at home have questions for Katie? Let's see. Okay, so, I see that Tom had commented that the Shenandoah Valley is bordered of the bubbling area expected to vanish there due to global warming in coming decades. So Katie's shaking her head, yes, that global climate change will impact things. And then sorry, Angie, I just saw that. Can we repeat the questions? Next time we'll know to do that. Or you can email Katie and she'll answer all your questions that you have. All right, well, everyone, so we're wrapping up here. You at home, go think about grassland birds, think about what you've learned tonight and how you can make a difference in the world. And good birding to everyone. Peace out.